Please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome back to Omegon 2 Electric Boogaloo. Today we're going to be looking at two videos from a user called IamEto. I don't know if it's IamEto or something else I don't care to learn to pronounce. They are a TikTok user with over 24,000 followers. One of their videos, which is no longer on their account, made its way to Twitter. Understandably, because of the traffic it generated from the user in question, they removed it. I know this because I scrolled their page for a while to try and find it, but they used a different style of presentation and then changed to the one that is used in this video, as in the thumbnail writing. Yes, that. The video in question is about grammar. The second video is about ableism and fat phobia, one of my favourite subjects to cover on this platform. When it comes to grammar, I come close to a bit of a NAZI on that one. Much like spelling, I believe if you're going to, you may as well spell it correctly. It is, after all, a language. Bastardizing it does not help, and it should not be condoned. But let's see how this, according to the user, Toe, is racist, which is what they believe.
Why grammar policing is racist, part 2.
Okay, so what sucks here more than anything else in the whole widest of worlds is the fact that I don't have access to part 1. For the sake of it, there is nothing wrong with policing grammar, especially when people incorrectly use grammar or fail to use grammar at all. I'm looking at you on Twitter. You have all those characters. You can insert a sodding comma, full stop, semicolon, or brackets when they are required.
So we talked about AAVE in my last video, so let's talk about how it came to be.
Oh, that same language that has been culturally appropriated by those who are English of African descent. Born in England, raised in England, gone to private school in fact, but then decided, but axe sounds so much better than asked. I personally don't care for this misuse of language, mostly because a word already exists, and quite a large number of people who come from different countries, for example, make it a point to learn that language. Why those who are in the country have decided to alter their language to suit themselves baffles me, because then when others try and use it themselves that they themselves are not African American, they get accused of cultural appropriation. There is a point to be made when it comes to the inability to articulate a point using the language you are attempting to speak. If you've been in the country or your family have for generations, at that point it should be fluent.
In this country and well across any other European colonized nation that had black slavery, teaching slaves how to read and write was illegal.
You will find with slavery, if you go back to the earliest recorded civilizations, that slaves were treated the same across the board. They had no rights, regardless of their race. Many determined others to be inferior because of their race. I would advise against blaming Europeans on par with that of Americans. First of all, because they came to the senses sooner and abolished slavery a lot sooner. Europeans, like any other continent, have endured a form of slavery. It's just not acknowledged by many because they would rather believe that theirs is worse than anyone else's because of race, or faith as well.
Thus creating a generation, and many generations actually, that were functionally illiterate.
This, over many generations, has been addressed. You will find illiteracy is not a genetic trait, though. The ability to comprehend can come down to genetics, of course it can, but that can also be addressed with help and guidance. Patience, understanding, nurturing, as opposed to pointless blaming. Slavery in the US has been gone for quite some time. Many decades have passed. So what is the excuse for not being able to speak properly, and how is the inability to use grammar properly a form of racism? As you are trying to lay the foundation with your form of context, I would like to point out that your context does not stack up with the many decades that have transpired since.
Fast forward to Jim Crow era South, and black schools were severely underfunded. And their teachers did not really have any criteria to be teaching, they were just doing the best, creating a whole other host of generations that were also illiterate.
You'll find in America that this on a state level is an impossible thing to get right. I'm not trying to make excuses for those who intentionally sought to hold others back. I have found often that many governments seek to do this anyway so that they can stay in office. They reduce the common denominator, reduce the presence of private grammar and so on education institutions, in favour of providing what they believe is a baseline of curriculum. But does that apply to the US, where schools should be fortresses, the best of the best, the cream of the crop? Same for teachers, where it should be the most competitive positions to have. It should be free to the taxpayer, yet the teacher should be paid the most. These systems don't exist because many don't want to invest in that. I should also point out, Jim Crow era schools, the segregation aspect, ended in 1965. The year is 2024. While the generations then were held back, I agree, it has been over 50 years.
Fast forward to today, and some of the lowest literacy rates in this country are in Black and brown communities. These school systems are racist.
The user in question, Toe, failed to provide a source for this, so I bothered to look it up. Cited from 2 years ago, the average literacy rate in the United States done by state for adults is 88%. Literate, that is. Some of the lowest states would include Nevada, New Jersey, and New Mexico. And as generations have gone by gender, this has been increasing. From 2009 to now, it has jumped quite a number of percentile, something that people should be very proud of. You cannot expect, for example, that the literacy rate will suddenly just jump massively. The gradual increase is a great sign of improvement within the education system. So how is it racist?
How we dictate what is proper English is racist.
As an Englishman, you are culturally appropriating my language and then bastardizing it to suit yourself, using crappy excuses of history to make a point. I do not give consent for you to do that to my language.
Yelling at a Black and brown person for not speaking English in the way that you want them to be speaking English, even though you've created an entire system to make sure that they did not know how to speak English, that's just racism to me.
I find it somewhat fascinating you're using the English language to make your points, and you're eloquently articulating your points. Congratulations. Whoever you are speaking of, I have no idea. This is just posturing and vagueness in action to drive home a race point because you're baiting for clicks. You got the response when it got tweeted out by libs of TikTok. You then did exactly what any other coward does when they make a point but don't have the balls to stand by it, and you deleted it. So now let's look at the video titled Fat Phobia and Ableism.
It's not about whether or not fatness is healthy or unhealthy.
You're right, but that's because to be fat is to be unhealthy. It is not ableist or phobic to say that. It is a statement of fact, something which many cannot stand. As is well established in the online space, feelings are vitally more important to those people that take offence to being told they are fat.
It's about asking why we use health as an indicator of one's value and worth.
That is an intentionally nebulous statement to try and make this more philosophical. You'll find, for example, the worth of someone who is supermorbidly obese is very limited if they were trying to get a job as a fireman, unless you're in New York, in which case you've got a very big chance. The same can be said serving in the military. Anything that involves certain levels of action or physicality, people of the larger, shorter, smaller variety, the extremes especially, may well struggle to fit in or be able to perform their duties at that level. Worth is determined in the employment sector by those employing. They want to get the very best out of you. You have to be able to give them the very best as well. Mobility in a number of occupations can certainly apply. In society as a whole, humanity is a judgy species. Hardly a surprise.
Even if you are in the peak of your body and your health, you do not inherently have more value than the person who is dying.
From a purely humanity-based sentiment, I 100% agree with you on that. But I firmly believe no lives matter, so you're all equal to me regardless. Many people do not care about other people, therefore their worth is limited. Say, for example, someone is passing away. If you are not related to that person, do not know that person in any way, shape or form, of course there's a modicum of compassion, but it is limited and will never be on par with that of someone they know or are related to. The worth part you're quite right about. However, society doesn't work this way.
And implying that you do implies that our worth is dependent on what we can produce.
Oddly enough, since we live in certain types of societies where we have to do things to get things, that is an accurate summation of one's worth. That doesn't apply to those who are in any way disabled or those who are at retirement age, and of course children as well. But those who are adult, fully functioning and able to do, are generally considered of worth. This isn't some contentious point. How does this tie in though to ableism and fat phobia though?
Fear of fatness, or fat phobia, is an extension of ableism. We are afraid of being fat in a similar way as we are afraid of being disabled.
Understandably so. I am terrified of being fat and or disabled because I like mobility, I like flexibility, I like to live knowing that my body is not holding me back or preventing me from doing whatever I want. I'm glad you've distinguished the two, as opposed to some that wish to treat fatness as a disability, because it's not a disability. Everyone should be afraid of being disabled and of being fat. Certainly the more extreme varieties anyway. Does anyone ever want to go on 600-pound life, really?
And this is why body positivity must be intersectional as well. The same people who do not want fatness to be normalized are the same people to tell burn victims to go and hide their faces.
Can we leave intersectional feminism out? Bell Hooks completely cocked this one up. It created the Oppression Olympics. It then created further divide and never sought to resolve any societal problems, merely assigning blame and not bothering to work together to achieve equality. It does not need to be intersectional. Fat phobia is a legitimate fear. To be afraid to be disabled is too, by the way. If one looks down on others for being those, they are not phobic or ableist. They're just a judgy bloody human, a bit of a dick, a tosspot.
The fact of the matter is that fatness, along with disabilities and chronic illnesses, can happen to anyone, and is already normal. We just want to believe that we're the exception.
Oh, look at you, finishing your video with an almost emotional point. In the online space, this kind of crap doesn't float. Far too many people are what you'd call dead inside. Yes, well done though. Jolly good effort. Failed fundamentally. But you've entertained me enough that I might have to put you on my little retainer of content to look at from time to time. Ta-ta, everyone.